This video is quite old. I took it on a Note 6, I believe, so it's very old. When I first read the manual, the service manual that they actually send out to their Lexus dealers, it said you had to do all these crazy steps to get this. I thought there's no way in hell I'm doing this. So I thought, okay, I'll get under there and figure it out. I went under there and sure enough, lifted it up just enough. It cleared, boom, done. It was awesome. I should have put this video up many years ago. I'm sorry I didn't. Before you begin, you must disconnect the battery. Typically, you just disconnect the negative post, but I am going to do both, starting with the ground post first. So loosen it just enough to get it off there. And tuck it back. First things first, jack up the car. You're going to remove the 4 bolts holding this cover panel and pull it down. You want to take off this brace that's on the end of the exhaust manifold right after the precats, and it has 4 bolts here, and it has a nut behind it. Here, just 2 bolts, and there, and it has a nut behind it. So you have to use a box wrench behind here, and then just a socket. Take this off. It will give you easier access. I mean, still pretty easy, but easier access here to stick your arm through this spot right here. If you're facing your legs that way, and you're right-handed, you'll have an easier time getting to the bolts, the 2 bolts, but you'll probably reverse your body in order to deal with the 2 connections to the battery. And you'll need to take this off anyhow to lift the engine up and get space in here to drop the starter because it comes out of here. Take a flathead and remove this black plastic cover from the battery terminal post on the starter. Right there. Use a small flathead or needle nose pliers and push the tab in to remove the signal wire clip. Then you're going to want to focus on the main battery line, which is a 12mm nut, after you remove the large black plastic housing over it. You can choose to do this while it's on, which I did, or you can wait till you remove the starter and let it dangle and try to work it from the back. But the reason I did not do that is because the tension on the 12mm bolt may be so tight that it will be difficult to do with one hand. Here's the base bolt on the base of the starter, and I used a long 14 box wrench. You can do it here or here. Make sure it's really flush because you don't want to strip these. And the little part that's hanging down, you use a hammer. So hammer that part right there. Another method I use, which I used on this, put a larger box wrench through the base, like this, for leverage. So you put this on here, like that, and then you pull that down for leverage. This is a little trick I always use when I don't have anything else. It looks like that. And then for the back one, the hardest one to get to, which is right there. Right there. I used this. This is a 1/2-inch drive with a 8-inch extension, and then a 6-inch extension, and then a deep 14mm socket with a bend. You put that on there, and then you have it at a 90-degree angle. Like this. 90-degree angle. And you gotta make sure you grab the top piece right there and hold it straight, or else it will come off and it will strip the bolt. So what you have to do is hold that straight up top, and if you can, connect a breaker bar right here and have someone over on the front end of the car, have them use force while you hold this in to try to balance this so it doesn't come off. It's a pain. It's really difficult, but that's the hardest part of the whole job. Now you're going to fully remove the 2 bolts, completely screw them out, remove them, remove the 2 lines fully, and the starter should be free to be maneuvered out. Then you'll be able to lift up the engine and pull it out. Make sure you have the car supported from other jack stands and another jack just to be safe. Now you're going to remove the 2 subframe nuts so you can lift up the engine a little bit, enough to clear the starter through when you're ready. You're also going to be using a block of wood here in order to distribute the weight across the entire pan and not dent it with the metal of the jack. Make sure your piece of wood aligns with the pan only because you want to avoid the subframe crossmember in order to actually lift the engine up a little bit. You're going to jack up the center part to lift it up to let the starter clear out. You want to keep the wood to the other side so you have enough room to stick your hand through where the pan is, and you're going to remove the starter from above now that the space is cleared out enough to maneuver it. Also a tip, put a light here, get one that fits so you can see whether it's day or night. You'll have a much easier time seeing clearly of what you're doing if you stuff a light right here in this area. The key here is to remove the starter and then twist it around so the gear is facing you. You want to see the gear. This is how you're going to get it out through the space. Here you see which direction the gear is facing. My legs are facing the opposite side of the car, and the long points sit like this between the downpipe and the rest of the engine, or the bell housing here. And you will remove it just like that. I just want you to see here the angle that it will sit at when you pull it out. This is what it looks like. A key thing to note here is you want to raise your engine the minimal amount in order to not stress other components, so just enough to get this clear. Now you're going to take your new starter or your rebuilt starter and push it in the same way. Remember, you flip it and maneuver it once it's up inside of that space because you'll have more space to turn it around. These are the model numbers for the old and new starter. These are the years listed on the Lexus website. When it comes to models and years, use your discretion because the listings can be inaccurate. So push it through there and then twist it 180. Now I'm just twisting it around carefully so the solenoid is on top. See the solenoid starting to become on top. The solenoid is right there. Here's a shot from below here. And you want to make sure before you bolt this in that you take this large wire that goes to the battery and you tuck it behind the solenoid. Because if you have this bolted in right there and the wire's in front, you have to unbolt it and put it behind. I just barely secured it in, so I'm just going to pull the bolt out and put it back, but just to note, you got to make sure that's behind there. Once you have the starter flipped around and the solenoid is on top, go ahead and put the lower bolt in just a little bit so it can secure it while you lower down the car. You can leave it up if you'd like, whatever has more clearance for you, but removing the jack will allow you to see through the bottom here and give you a much better vantage point to put the stuff back on. This is how you want to have the main line going to it, and you want to have the ring near the copper stud. And if you need to use a tool, use needle nose pliers to pull it down over the copper stud. Once the ring is actually around the stud, you can just push it down with your finger as long as it's aligned. It's very easy to do from here. And then secure it on with the 12mm nut. This is the easiest way that I found. Again, the most difficult part of this will be undoing and then tightening this rear bolt right there. This is the view while I'm looking through here. The easiest way I've found is to put your arm back behind the downpipe here and go from this direction. It's a bit tight in there, but once you get your arm through, the pain sort of subsides. You want to finger tighten both bolts, make sure they're threaded correctly, because if they're not, that will be a huge issue later. So finger tighten them and then go ahead and fully tighten them once both are in and the starter is seated correctly, and then go ahead and reconnect the lines and tighten the 12mm nut all the way too. So this should be completely secure from here. Here the clasp has broken off and it just falls out. I put a little bit of gray RTV silicone on it and it will be removable, but this will help it stay in even with vibrations. You could try zip tying it, but there's not a lot of space to work up there. Also, you could use red thread locker for the main starter bolts if you'd like. Make sure it's the removable type. There's also taking off the driver's side of the motor and removing the exhaust manifold and getting through there. I personally wouldn't do that because it just sounds tedious, but also because if you damage one of the bolts or nuts, whatever's holding the exhaust manifold on, which is common because these are quite old and oxidized and heated and expanded, that will be an absolute mess, and that will just ruin your week, because not your day, your week, because that's what happens when one bolt goes off. Anyhow, you could do that because it is always easier going from the top. So there are multiple ways to do this, and I think all of them don't involve doing any of the crazy steps listed in the service manual. However, in my humble opinion, I do think this is still the easiest route to go as far as simplicity and tangents that can happen, avoiding those. And an alternative, but it just is more recent, that people are going in through the wheel well, taking the wheel off, removing all the paneling there and going in. That could help, and that could also be done as well. So you have two different options. I still feel this one is quite simple. I mean, it's just two nuts, lift it up a little bit with a 2x4 you have on hand and pull it out. It's the hardest part is just removing the bolts. So either or, you should be good. Do not listen to all the stuff online, especially the older stuff, because this is an older vehicle and you should be good to get this done. That's it. I did my best to piece together this old video and voice over some stuff to try to make it clear and concise and give step by step to help you out. If you have questions, just put them in the comments. I have no problem replying, and I will recall whatever I can. And subscribe for more. I appreciate all your support, and I will see you in the next video. Take care and good luck.